Chapter 1. The Sands Sing. The twin suns of Helion Prime split the horizon into molten gold and glass. Dr. Kael adjusted the visor of his field mask and watched the light fracture across the dunes like a warning. He'd seen deserts before, but none that sounded alive. A low vibration trembled through his boots, faint as a heartbeat, and the monitor at his wrist pulsed in sympathy. Taren's Saul waited beside the transport, all silver lines and unbending posture, his skin carrying the faint shimmer that marked the Helionite race. His expression gave nothing away. "You walk too far from the vehicles," he said. "The sands remember weight. They might not return it." Kael wasn't sure if that was superstition or science. "I'm recording seismic variance," he replied. "The caverns are changing frequency. Or they are warning us to leave them sealed." Their voices met the air like opposite charges, one precise, one resonant. Between them the heat thickened, filled with the strange metallic tang that passed for wind on Helion Prime. Kael checked his readings again to hide a flicker of unease. The vibration rose, steadied, then fell silent. "Did you feel that?" he asked. Taren's gaze slid to the dunes. Every guardian on this continent felt it. He looked back at Kael, tone softening to something almost curious. "You have come at the planet's turning. That is unwise." Kael logged the phrase, "planet's turning," into his notes. "My orders say otherwise." A shimmer of sound, no louder than breath, rolled under them. The surface rippled as if the world exhaled. Kael's pulse matched it once, twice, before he forced his hand still. Taren tilted his head, the motion elegant and unsettling. "Your frequency echoes ours. That should not be possible." Before Kael could ask what he meant, the ground sang again, clear, harmonic, impossible. Instruments lit with unreadable data. Above, the twin suns flared until the sky went white. Kael turned toward Taren, ready to demand an explanation, but the Helionite's expression stopped him. Not fear, not anger, but recognition. The sands stilled, the hum retreated into the earth. Taren finally said, "Now you understand why we keep the planet's heart sealed." And for the first time, Kael wondered whether he had just opened it.
Chapter 2. Frequencies. Taren POV. The suns had lowered by a finger's breadth, and the color of the sand turned from gold to burnished copper. To Taren, it felt like the planet drawing breath between notes. The vibration beneath his feet was fainter now, almost a memory, yet it crawled along the edges of his perception. Off-key, human. The outsider walked beside him in careful silence, the hum of his recording device punctuating each step. Taren's own resonance kept slipping toward the foreign tone, curious in spite of discipline. He tightened the focus of his breathing pattern until the interference quieted. Humans called it science. Helionites called it listening. "Is your world always this still?" Kael asked at last, his voice filtered through the mask. "This is not stillness. It is waiting." He meant it as a warning, but the human smiled slightly, as if waiting were a kind of challenge. That smile unsettled him. It was too steady, too open. They approached the perimeter of the first cavern. The surface sensors chimed. The air itself seemed denser here, saturated with stored sound. Taren could taste metal on his tongue, the planet's language. Kael knelt to adjust a node. "These frequencies shouldn't exist at this depth," he murmured. "Either your geology defies physics, or my instruments are wrong." "Your instruments are not wrong. They are incomplete." He shouldn't have spoken that way. Guardians did not reveal temple knowledge to off-worlders. Yet something in Kael's intensity, the precision of his hands, the way he kept distance even while drawn close, broke through his restraint. The human looked up, meeting his gaze. Then, "Teach me what's missing." For a heartbeat, both frequencies aligned, a low harmonic that made the sand around them tremble. Taren felt the pulse through his chest plate and knew the planet had noticed them. He stepped back first. Enough for today. The suns will set soon. The caverns dislike darkness. Kael blinked at the phrase, as if translating it into data. Dislike? Ask them tomorrow. Taren turned toward the transport, hiding the way his own resonance fluttered in irregular rhythm. The human followed, still quiet, still recording. Behind them, the dunes whispered in a frequency only Taren could hear, one he had not heard since the last collapse. It begins again, the planet seemed to say, and he feared it was right.
Chapter 3. First Resonance. Kael Riven's POV. The research dome slept under twin moons, its shell gleaming like glass dusted with frost. Inside, instruments murmured, soft oscillations, blinking lights, the pulse of recorded sand songs. Kael should have been asleep, his body longed for rest, but the readings from the day refused to settle. The frequencies from the silver dune had shifted again, half an octave higher, almost deliberate. He adjusted the spectrometer. The waveform shivered. The pitch rose until it hovered at the edge of hearing, and something deep in Kael's chest echoed it, a pressure behind his ribs, familiar and unwanted. He reached for the stabilizer cuff around his wrist and thumbed it active. The hum faded, but didn't vanish. A voice came through the calm. "Dr. Riven, you still awake?" Taren's timbre was unmistakable, even through static. Cool metal wrapped in warmth. "Data check," Kael said, keeping his tone neutral. "The caverns are escalating. Then you should step away. I need another reading cycle first." Silence. Then, quietly, "The planet's tone changes for no human. You risk calling it to you." The calm crackled again, no words this time, only a low harmonic that vibrated through the lab's floor. Kael froze. All around him, glass containers rattled in synchrony. Outside, the dunes began to move. He ran to the observation window. The sands rippled outward from a central point near the caverns, forming concentric circles of light. Data panels flared red. Resonance event in progress. Taren burst through the airlock moments later, coat thrown over his armor, eyes reflecting both moons. "You heard it." Kael said, "I measured it," breath uneven. "It's an energy surge, shouldn't exist above the crust." "It is not energy," Taren replied. "It is answer." Before Kael could respond, the floor lifted under them, just enough to make him stumble. Taren caught his arm. For an instant, their whisk devices touched, and the resonance field between them fused. Light washed through the dome in gold filaments, following the pattern of their twin heartbeats. Kael's sensors spiked to unreadable levels. His pulse followed the same curve. Then, as quickly as it came, the vibration ceased. The lights died. Kael steadied himself, pulling free. "That was interaction. Cross-frequency interference. Between us." Taren's expression was unreadable, yet his voice softened. "No interference, Dr. Riven. The world recognized a chord." Outside, the last tremor rolled across the desert and vanished into the night. Kael stared at the empty readings, every rational part of him struggling to explain what his rest had already known. Chapter 4. Aftermath. The lab smelled faintly of ionized sand and burnt ozone. Kael's instruments lay silent, their screens ghosted by error codes. His wrist cuffs still tingled from the overload. Faint gold dust clung to his sleeve like pollen. The door seals hissed. Administrator Vara strode in with 2 security drones. "Dr. Riven, report." Kael straightened. "A spontaneous resonance pulse from the caverns. The readings show a catastrophic energy leak," Vara cut in. Her gaze flicked to the Helionite standing beside Kael. "Guardian Sul, your people swore the caverns were contained." "They are, until your machines disturbed them." Vara's voice went sharp. "We'll investigate which machine, human or otherwise, caused this. Until then, you two are assigned Joint Command, HRD Protocol 12, Cross-Species Verification Team."
Kael blinked. A forced pairing? That's necessary, she said. You caused this together, you'll fix it together. Dismissed. The drones followed her out, leaving silence thick enough to taste. Kael rubbed the bridge of his nose. Well, congratulations. We've been promoted to mutual suspicion. Taren regarded him for a long moment. It seems the planet is not the only one that hums against its own harmony. Kael looked up. Meaning? You measure what you do not trust. I wanted to argue, but the words stuck. Trust requires data. Then gather it, Taren said quietly. We begin at first light. The next dawn bled pale through the shielding glass. Outside, the dunes bore faint rings where the pulse had erupted. Kael packed sensors, Taren prepared tuning rods that shimmered with stored resonance. They worked in tense rhythm, one marking coordinates, the other drawing symbols in the sand. Kael finally asked, You think the caverns called to us? I know they did, and they rarely call twice without purpose. Their eyes met over the open desert, the light between them sharp as a blade. Whatever had happened in the night wasn't finished. It was only changing key. As they set off towards the silver dune, the planet began to hum again, soft, expectant, like an overture waiting for its next chord.
Chapter 5. The Long Walk. The silver dune rose ahead like a frozen wave. By mid-morning, the heat shimmered so fiercely that the horizon itself seemed to bend. Kael trudged behind Taren's long strides, sensors clinking at his belt, the air thick with static. Every few minutes, the sand underfoot gave a faint, musical sigh. He had expected a trek of pure geology, not conversation. But silence between them felt heavier than sound. Guardian soul, he said at last. How far to the cavern mouth? 1/2 league, Taren replied without turning. The dunes shift to hide it. They know strangers are watching. Kael checked his readings. Dunes don't think. They remember, Taren counted. His tone held no sarcasm. It was simple belief. Kael opened his mouth to argue, then caught the look over Taren's shoulder. A quiet challenge, not anger. He let it go. Arguing about definitions wouldn't help the data, and the data mattered more than winning a point. They stopped at noon in the shade of a ridgeline. The air smelled faintly of iron and mineral heat. Kael knelt, uncapping a flask of condensed water. Here. Taren hesitated, then accepted, touching the rim to his forehead first. A Helionite sign of thanks, Kael remembered. He returned the gesture awkwardly. Taren almost smiled. For a brief moment, the silence changed, less guarded, almost companionable. Then the wind carried a low vibration from beneath them. Taren stood at once, palm flat to the ground. It stirs. Kael dropped his instruments. The resonance rippled upward, registering on every sensor at once. He watched the waveform bloom across the screen, 2 frequencies entwined, matching in amplitude. That's us, he murmured. Taren's voice came quiet, steady. Yes, the planet listens when we are near each other. Kael met his gaze. Then, we'll give it something to listen to. Taren's POV. The human's defiance was unexpected and oddly heartening. He moved with precision, placing sensors where Taren traced symbols of balance. 2 systems, 1 purpose. The air between them vibrated with low harmony. It was not comfort, it was recognition. By dusk, they reached the cavern mouth, a wound of shadow in the dune's flank. Warm air breathed outward, smelling of stone and memory. Kael adjusted his recorder. Tomorrow we'll map the internal passages. Taren inclined his head. Tomorrow, the caverns decide whether to let us enter. They set camp a few paces apart. The hum beneath the sand never stopped, only softened, like a heart settling into rest. Taren lay awake, watching twin moons cast shifting silver over Kael's still form. A fragile alliance, he thought, but perhaps the first true harmony this world has heard in an age.
Chapter 6. Echo Depths. Kael Riven's POV.
At dawn, the dunes were cool and colorless, washed to gray under the twin suns' first light. Kael checked the seal on his respirator and tried not to think about the silence, the deep, expectant kind that meant the planet was listening again. Taren stood at the cavern mouth, fitting the last of the crystal rods to his harness. "The tunnels shift with resonance," he said. "If you lose the sound of my voice, you lose the way out." "Encouraging," Kael muttered, securing his datapad. "Lead on." They stepped inside. The change was immediate. Temperature dropped, air thickened, and the sound of their boots became muffled by the mineral walls. Bioluminescent filaments traced veins through the rock, glowing faintly gold. Kael recorded the pattern automatically, but awe crept in despite him. "The caverns hum at 37 hertz, he said. "That's almost a human heartbeat." Taren touched a wall, closing his eyes. "That is no accident." The passage narrowed. Faint motes of sand drifted like dust in water. Somewhere ahead, a low vibration swelled. Kael's instruments caught the signal and began to feed back. "Fields fluctuating," he warned. "The planet tests us," Taren said quietly. "Do not answer too loudly." A new tone joined the first, higher, keening, and the rock beneath them rippled as if breathing. Kael steadied himself against the wall. Warmth pulsed under his palm, a slow, deliberate rhythm. "This is live energy," he whispered. "Geothermal?" "Living," Taren replied. "The heart of Helion." The pulse intensified, resonating through both of them until Kael's wrist cuff lit again. The waveform on his display showed two signatures entwined, his and Taren's, mirroring the pattern from the night of the first event. Taren opened his eyes. "It recognizes the chord again." Kael swallowed, mind racing. "Then maybe it's trying to communicate." The vibration subsided, leaving only the faint aftersound of a heartbeat fading into stone. Taren lowered his hand. "We have been invited deeper." Kael looked down the dark passage spiraling ahead. Part of him wanted to retreat to data uncertainty. Another part wanted to follow the sound wherever it led. He chose forward. Taren's POV. He watched the human step into shadow without hesitation. Courage or refusal to show fear, it hardly mattered. The planet had marked them both, and now it expected an answer. Taren followed, the glow from his tuning rods painting shifting light across the walls. Somewhere far below, a deeper resonance stirred. "The heart waits," he said softly. Kael glanced back, eyes reflecting gold from the rods. "Then let's not keep it waiting." Together they descended, the echo of their footfalls merging with the planet's quiet song.
Chapter 7. Resonant Anomalies. Kael's POV. The passage forked 3 times before the instruments began to lose calibration. Every surface shimmered faintly, like the walls were alive with static. Kael kept recalibrating, muttering to himself, but the readings refused to stay consistent. "Something's wrong," he said. "The sensors are lagging by seconds." "The caverns bend sound and time together," Taren replied, voice low. "Your tools are honest, the world is not." "Not comforting," Kael muttered, checking his pad again. "If I can't trust the instruments, I'll have to trust you." "Then listen, not measure." He wanted to argue, but the deeper hum began to change pitch, from a low, steady tone to a trembling dissonance. The light from Taren's rods flickered wild, bouncing wild shadows across the tunnel walls. Kael froze. The rock ahead of them was shifting, not collapsing, moving, as if it were breathing inward and out. "Taren! I feel it." The hum rose another octave, sharp enough to make Kael's teeth ache. He stumbled back. Taren caught him by the shoulder just before the floor cracked open. A column of glowing dust shot upward, twisting in midair like liquid light. It coalesced into geometric shapes. Not random, structured pulses, almost like a code. Kael's scientist's brain clicked back online. That's a harmonic projection. The caverns are translating resonance into geometry. Taren's hand stayed steady on his arm. It is a warning. The projection flared suddenly, emitting a shockwave that knocked both of them backward. Kael's datapad went dark. For a second, all he could hear was the ringing in his ears and the echo of his own breath. When he opened his eyes, the dust pattern had vanished. Only a faint scar in the floor remained, a spiral-shaped, burned into stone. Kael got up slowly, wiping grit from his faceplate. Warning or not, it reacted to us, specifically to our resonance signature. Taren nodded grimly. It knows our chord now. Kael looked at him, the reality sinking in. Then if we keep going deeper, it will answer again, Taren finished. Taren's POV. He watched Kael kneel beside the spiral, brushing dust away with careful fingers. The human's curiosity burned bright, even when fear flickered under it. This is no natural anomaly, Kael said. It's designed, intentional. Taren turned toward the dark beyond the spiral. The hum had steadied again, low and pulsing, as if the planet was waiting. The caverns are alive, he said softly, and they have chosen us to hear them. Kael stood, brushing off his gloves. Then we need to learn to listen before they decide we're noise. Taren almost smiled. Brief, genuine. For a scientist, you speak like a priest. For an alpha sworn to silence, Kael said, shouldering his pack, you talk a lot. They started forward again. The air shimmered faintly gold, and the hum followed them. Not threatening this time, but curious.
Chapter 8. The Spiral Chamber. Kael's POV. The tunnel opened abruptly into a cavern vast enough to hold a city. Light filtered from nowhere and everywhere, diffuse, golden, humming faintly, as though the air itself remembered sunlight. Kael slowed to a stop, chest tight with awe. By every planetary map, this chamber shouldn't exist. Taren's voice carried softly behind him. Few things here exist for your maps. At the center of the space lay a spiral carved into the floor, identical to the mark they'd seen earlier, but enormous, 30 meters across. Around it, crystal columns rose like frozen lightning, their surfaces etched with repeating waveforms. Kael knelt near one column, brushing off dust. This is data, a pattern of sound encoded in mineral lattice. They used resonance as writing. He activated his wrist reader. The crystal responded instantly, pulsing with soft light. A tone filled the air, low, layered, and heartbreakingly melodic. Taren stiffened. You should not. But the tone changed before he could stop it. A second note joined, harmonic and dissonant at once. Kael's device flared, matching frequency automatically. And then it happened again. Their signature. Two intertwined frequencies, human and Helionite. The chamber answered in kind, amplifying the chord until the walls vibrated. Kael staggered back, hands over his ears, but the sound wasn't only in air. It was inside him, threading through bone and blood. Taren crossed the space in 3 strides, gripping his shoulders. Kael, stop the device. I can't. It's synced. Taren pressed his palm to the floor. The gold light dimmed. Slowly, painfully, the resonance subsided until the faintest hum remained. Kael exhaled shakily. It reacted to us, again, but not violently this time. Taren's voice dropped. It recognized us, as part of its memory. Kael looked up, meeting his eyes. Then this chamber, it's a recorder of bonds. Taren's expression was unreadable for a long time. Of unions, the kind that once bridged worlds before ours. Silence stretched between them, thick with the implication neither dared to voice. The hum in the air softened, settling into a rhythm that matched their breathing. Kael finally said, very quietly, "We just proved connection can transcend biology." Taren studied him, gaze sharp but not cold. "You speak like discovery is not the same as destiny." Kael felt heat rise to his face and turned away, busying himself with recalibrating his reader. "I speak like a scientist who's just rewritten half his field notes." Taren's reply came almost gently. "And I speak like someone who has waited to hear that chord again for centuries." Taren's POV. The human knelt at the spiral's edge, tracing lines of energy that glowed faintly beneath his touch. So fragile, and yet the chamber answered him as if to an air returned. Helion's old songs spoke of resonance pairs, two beings whose frequencies aligned so completely that they could open the planet's inner gates. It was myth. Until now. Taren lowered his head, not in submission, but in respect. "If the heart remembers you, Kael Riven, then perhaps I was sent to learn why."
Chapter 9, Signal Above, Kael's Point of View. When Kael climbed back to the surface, dawn had already burned the dunes white. The research dome shimmered in the distance, thin, brittle, too still. His wrist cuff pulsed red. Colony transmission waiting. Old. "Return immediately. Your mission is suspended pending review." His gut tightened. Suspended? We just confirmed direct planetary response. Exactly why the Council wants control of it. Vera paused. "Guardian Soul's presence complicates matters. Bring him under escort." The link cut. Kael stared at the empty horizon, wind hissing through his teeth. They heard something, he thought, or someone told them. Behind him, the air shifted. "You look as if the sky has spoken ill of you," Taren said, emerging from shadow, sand glittering along his armor. Kael turned. "The colony wants us back. They've grounded the mission." Taren studied him quietly. "Because of what we found?" "Because they don't understand it, and they want to own it before they do." Kael folded his arms, fighting the urge to pace. "If they get inside that chamber, they'll tear it apart." Taren's gaze lifted toward the dome. "Then we must decide whether to obey them or protect the heart." Kael met his eyes. "That sounds dangerously like mutiny." "That sounds like loyalty," Taren replied, "to what still sings." For a long moment, neither spoke. The twin suns rose higher, casting twin shadows behind them, one human, one Helionite, almost touching. Later, same day, Taren's point of view. From the ridge above the colony, Taren watched drones circle like black seeds against the bright sky. Communications arrays flared with blue light. The humans were broadcasting deeper into orbit. "They are calling for reinforcements," he murmured. Kael adjusted his field scope. "Emergency contact beacon. They're not just reviewing, they're escalating. What will they do when the planet answers again?" Kael lowered the scope. "Try to weaponize the sound." Taren felt the hum beneath his boots, faint, restless. "Then Helion will defend itself. It always has." Kael looked up at him, weary but resolute. Maybe this time it doesn't have to fight alone. The words hung between them, quiet but dangerous. Below, the colony's transmitters blinked vaster, sending a signal skyward that shimmered through the atmosphere like a challenge. Above the clouds, something hummed in reply. Taren's HUD. Comment. "Incoming energy signature. Confirming planetary response."
Chapter 10. Fault Lines. Kael's point of view. The air inside the colony dome felt too thin, filtered through machines that smelled of metal and sterilized air. Kael hadn't realized how alive the caverns had felt until now, how this place, by contrast, seemed to hum only with suspicion. Administrator Vara waited in the central briefing room, surrounded by holomaps of the Silver Dune. Her expression didn't shift when they entered. "Dr. Riven, Guardian Soul, sit." They did. The table's surface glowed blue, projecting their recorded resonance patterns. The intertwined frequencies spiraled upward like twin flames. Vara gestured toward them. "Explain this." Kael folded his hands. "We triggered an energy field, responsive, not hostile. It's symbiotic, possibly an ancient interface." "Possibly?" Vara cut in. "Your data suggests a biological sync event. The board believes it may be an infection." Taran's jaw flexed. "You speak of harmony as disease?" Vara turned on him. "You will address me through Dr. Riven." Kael's pulse spiked. "He has every right." "Enough," Vara said sharply. "You've brought an uncontrolled phenomenon into human infrastructure. Until we determine the risk, both of you are confined to decontamination quarters." Kael stared at her. "You can't quarantine a frequency. Watch us." Vara shut down the hollow and motioned to the guards. 2 drones glided forward. Taran rose instantly. No weapon drawn, only the kind of stillness that implied power. Kael touched his arm before anything worse could happen. "We'll cooperate," he said. "For now." The look Taran gave him was unreadable, part question, part warning, but he followed as they were led away. Later. Taran's point of view. The containment room was small, its walls humming with suppression fields meant to block resonance, yet the air between them still vibrated faintly, the echo of their shared chord refusing silence. Kael sat on the narrow bunk, eyes fixed on his datapad. He said, "They'll dissect the recordings. They'll think they can separate our signatures." Taran paced once, twice. "They will fail. What is joined in harmony cannot be unmade by fear." Kael looked up, frustration breaking through restraint. "You don't understand human politics. They'll call it contamination, not connection, and they'll burn what they can't control." Taran stopped in front of him. "Then you must choose what you are loyal to, them or the song that saved your life." Silence fell, deep as the caverns. Kael's throat tightened. "It's not that simple. Nothing alive ever is." Outside, alarms pulsed faintly through the dome, another resonance spike from the dunes. The planet was stirring again, and the colony would soon demand answers neither of them could safely give. Taran glanced toward the sealed door. "The fault lines are widening, Kael Riven, in their world and in ours." Kael met his gaze, the low hum between them steady despite the barrier walls. "Then we'd better decide which side we're standing on before it all breaks."
Chapter 11. Containment Breach. Kael's POV. The hum began as a faint tremor in the walls, so low Kael thought it was his pulse. Then the suppression field flickered. Every light in the room dimmed to amber. Taren looked up instantly. "It follows us, even here." Kael pressed his hand to the wall. The vibration answered, rising in rhythm to his heartbeat. The instruments on the table snapped alive, scrolling nonsense code. "It's resonating through the colony grid. That's not possible. The barriers are insulated." "Not against a living planet." The floor bucked once, a short, violent lurch that threw both of them against the wall. Red alarms blared. The lock on the door released with a hiss. Automatic emergency override. Kael grabbed his datapad, half disbelief, half reflex. "Containment breach. We have to shut the field down before it collapses the dome." Taren was already moving. "Then move." They ran. Corridors twisted with flickering lights. Technicians shouted over intercoms. A security drone skimmed past, broadcasting orders to evacuate lower levels. Kael ducked under sparking conduits, the air sharp with ozone. At the control bay, Vera's voice cut through the chaos. "Riven, what did you bring back with you?" Kael slammed his hands on the console. "It's not us, it's responding to the suppression frequency. You're forcing it to fight back." "Then turn it off." "I'm trying." The panel flared hot white. Energy arced, tossing him backward.
He hit the floor hard, vision spinning. Taren caught his arm, pulling him upright. You cannot quiet a song by shouting over it. He tore a conduit free, rerouting the field manually. The hum dropped a tone, deep and steady. Kael blinked through the haze. You stabilized it. Only for moments. Taren pointed toward the dome's outer ridge, where cracks of light ran through the glass like veins. Helion wants us gone. Kael's mind raced. If we can reach the dunes, link with the primary resonance, we might draw the energy back underground. Then we go. Behind them, alarms screamed again. Vara's voice faded into static. Security to Bay 3! Stop them! Kael glanced once at the corridor, then at Taren. You realize this looks exactly like treason. Taren's mouth curved in something not quite a smile. Only to those who cannot hear the truth. They ran through the breach together. The dome's outer doors gave way in a rush of sand and heat, and the open desert roared like a living voice. Taren's POV. The suns were lowering, casting the dunes in fire and glass. Every step sent small avalanches of sound through the ground. The resonance storm was rising. Behind them, the colony dome shone with fractured light. Ahead, the silver dune shimmered as if waiting. Taren glanced at the human beside him, exhausted, stubborn, alive. The planet calls again, he said. Kael looked toward the horizon. Then let's answer before someone else does. They sprinted into the wind, twin silhouettes swallowed by gold and thunder.
Chapter 12. The Resonance Storm. Dual Point of View. The first gust hit like a pulse. Sand leapt from the ground in vertical sheets, glittering with static light. Every grain seemed to hum. Kael's wrist reader went blind the moment they reached the dune's crest. The air sang at 3 overlapping frequencies. The planet's entire crust was vibrating. "Helion's core is venting," he shouted above the roar. "We're standing in a global feedback loop." Taren raised a hand, shielding his eyes. "It is not anger. It is awakening." Lightning without clouds split the sky. Pure sound made visible. The dunes rippled like an ocean under invisible wind. Kael fought to keep his footing as energy threaded through the sand, turning it to molten glass in veins that glowed beneath their boots. "We have to ground the resonance," Kael said. "If it keeps climbing, it'll shatter the crust, and the colony with it." Taren thrust one of his tuning rods into the sand. The rod blazed gold. "Then sing to it. Match the tone." Kael stared. "You want me to harmonize with a planetary vibration?" "You already are," Taren answered simply. The storm rose higher. Kael felt the vibration behind his sternum, painful, intimate. His training screamed that it was suicidal. His instincts told him to trust it. He closed his eyes and let the resonance fill him. He didn't speak. He breathed the sound, lowering his frequency until the data bands on his wrist began to align. Taren's voice joined, a low countertone that steadied the chaos. 2 frequencies twined, spiraling downward until they touched the planet's base rhythm. The world responded. Light burst outward. Not destructive this time, but radiant. The dunes settled. The sky cleared in a single breath. When Kael opened his eyes, the desert was silent again, still humming, but slow and calm as if exhaling. He swayed. Taren caught him before he fell. "You spoke, and it listened," the Helionite said softly. Kael managed a faint smile. "We stabilized it, temporarily. The data—" "The world," Taren interrupted, "just chose you as its voice."
Kael wanted to protest, but the look in Taren's eyes silenced him. There was no triumph there, only recognition.
Chapter 13. Aftershock. Kael's POV. The storm was gone, but the silence it left behind pressed against Kael's ears like deep water. The dunes were still glassy from the resonance heat, the air faintly metallic. Every footstep cracked a thin film of cooled sandglass. He'd saved the colony, or postponed its collapse, but all he could think about was how it had felt when the resonance had answered him. The sound had moved through him, not around him. He still felt its echo behind his ribs. Taren moved ahead, scanning the horizon. His movements were more deliberate than usual, his posture tight with something like vigilance. Kael watched the twin suns rising. "They'll have drones searching within the hour," he said quietly. "The colony won't let this go. Let them come. You cannot cage what you do not understand." Kael crouched to test a patch of fused sand. "They'll say we broke containment, that we caused the storm." Taren looked back at him. "Did we?" Kael opened his mouth, then shut it again. "We stopped it. That should matter. To them, outcome is less important than control." The way Taren said it made Kael realize this wasn't just about humans. There were Helionites who would see him as a trespasser too. He was caught between two worlds, both afraid of what he represented. The wind picked up again, carrying a faint mechanical hum. Approaching drones. Taren turned toward the sound. "We cannot remain here." Kael gathered his pack. "There's a seismic relay station 4 kilometers east. It's half buried, but it has shielded transmission lines. We can hide there and send an encoded message to the research net." Taren nodded once, then offered his hand to help Kael down the slope. His touch was steady, grounding. Kael took it without hesitation, and then almost immediately regretted the instinct. Not because it was wrong, but because it felt too easy, too natural. He let go first. "Let's move." Taren's POV. The human's hand lingered in his palm even after release, the warmth imprinting like memory. Taren didn't understand why it unsettled him more than the approaching machines. They moved in silence across the ridges. When the first drone swept overhead, he drew Kael beneath a ledge of glass sand. The light bent strangely through the translucent surface, painting the human's face in gold and shadow. Kael's breathing was fast. They're scanning for energy signatures. Taren's own voice stayed low. "Then still your pulse. It carries more charge than you think." Kael shot him a sideways look, half a smile, half challenge. "That's not how physiology works." Taren tilted his head. "You are learning how little of this place obeys your physiology." The drone passed. The desert went quiet again. They waited until the sound faded, then climbed toward the relay ridge. Behind them, the colony dome glowed faintly on the horizon, fractured but alive. Taren could almost feel the invisible threads stretching between them in that place of glass and metal. Threads of consequence, of pursuit, of something more complicated than duty. He glanced at Kael. The human walked with his shoulders tight, carrying both triumph and guilt. The bond that had formed in the storm now felt like a fracture line running between them, bright and fragile.
Chapter 14. Relay Station. The relay station crouched half buried in a hollow of glassed sand. From a distance, it looked like a scar the storm had forgotten to heal. Kael keyed the access panel. Static flared, then a mechanical voice crackled to life. "System integrity, compromised, manual entry only." He forced the hatch open. The air inside was cool and stale, thick with the scent of old lubricant and dust. Emergency lights pulsed a faint amber rhythm. Taren followed, ducking under the low doorway. Even dim light clung to him. The reflective threads in his uniform caught and scattered it. He scanned the shadows, every sense alert. Kael sealed the hatch behind them and checked the relay's console. "Power's intermittent, but I can reroute it through the geothermal line. We'll have a few hours before the colony triangulates."
Taren's gaze lingered on the sand-coated floor. This place remembers the last resonance surge. You can feel the echo in the walls. Kael smiled faintly despite exhaustion. You make it sound alive. It is. Everything that vibrates is alive. The words shouldn't have steadied him, but they did. He powered the backup generator. The hum of electricity filled the room, a safer, smaller rhythm than the planetary storm. For the first time since the breach, Kael let himself sit. They'll brand us deserters, he said quietly. Vara will say we endangered the colony. The board will believe her. Taren leaned against the wall opposite him. You knew that when you ran. Kael rubbed his temples. Knowing isn't the same as being ready for it. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the low pulse of the relay's systems. You could go back, Taren said at last. Say, I forced you. They would believe that too. Kael looked up sharply. Would you? Taren's expression didn't change. No. Then don't ask me to lie. Something in the air shifted. Quiet understanding. Fragile, but real. Kael pushed himself to his feet. I'll send a coded report to the outer network. Maybe someone off-world will listen before the colony locks us out completely. Do it, Taren said. I will keep watch. The relay hummed softly in the dark. Outside, the desert glowed under twin moons. Inside, Kael's fingers moved over the console keys, steady now, tracing patterns of light across the screen. Taren watched the Hummin's reflection in the glass. Tired, intent, stubborn. A scientist trying to talk to a universe that rarely listened. When Kael finally leaned back, he said, Message sent. It'll take a few hours to route through the deepnet. Taren nodded. Then we wait. Kael hesitated. You don't have to stay awake the whole time. I do, Taren replied. Not all dangers make noise before they strike. Kael met his eyes for a long moment, then turned back to the console. Then I'll keep the signal steady. The relays hummed deepened slightly, as if acknowledging them both. For a heartbeat, the distance between them felt smaller. Not erased, just bridged by shared purpose. Outside, wind curled across the dunes like a whisper. The storm had passed, but its song had not ended.
Chapter 15. The Signal Returns. Kael's point of view. A faint chime woke Kael from a light doze. The relay console flickered, throwing pale light across the room. A new line of code crawled across the screen. An inbound transmission piggybacked on the one he'd sent. Someone answered, he whispered. Taren moved from the doorway in a heartbeat. Who? Kael worked the manual decrypt, pulse racing. The reply was short, but its origin tag froze him. Not off-world. It's from the colony net, Vara's security node. The console beeped again, an attachment unspooling. A grainy feed appeared, the colony briefing chamber, full of counselors. Vara's voice cut through the distortion. Dr. Riven and Guardian Soul are declared compromised assets. Retrieval teams authorized. All data seized. Do not allow them to reach the caverns again. The feed ended in static. Kael stared at the dark screen. They traced the signal. I thought the relay masking would hold. Taren's tone stayed calm but sharp. They will come fast. Kael swallowed hard. We can't go back underground. They'll expect that. Maybe if we reach the magnetic ridge north of here, we can jam their sensors. A new sound cut him off. A steady, rhythmic thrum from beneath the floor. Karen knelt, palm flat to the metal. Not machines, resonance. The planet is listening again. Kael frowned. It's responding to the broadcast. Then we have woken two hunters, Taren said softly. Your people above and your planet below. He straightened, meeting Kael's gaze. We must choose where to run, sky or stone. Kael hesitated. The scientist in him wanted to stay, to understand. But the air was growing warmer. The panels on the wall vibrated like a held breath. The ridge, he said finally. If we can reach it, we can block both the drones and the resonance feedback. Karen nodded once. Then we move now. Kael packed the portable drive, still trembling. I wanted contact. I didn't think it would talk back this loud. Karen gave a brief, almost wry look. Every voice must answer its echo. They forced the hatch open. Night wind rushed in, carrying red sand and the low, building hum of pursuit engines. Taren's point of view. The moons hung low, painting the dunes in cold fire. Far behind, pinpricks of light marked the drones fanning out from the colony. Far beneath,
The sand pulsed faintly with inner glow, the planet's heartbeat rising once more. Kael stumbled once on the slope. Taren caught his arm without thinking. The humans steadied, breath sharp. "They'll see us on infrared," Kael said. "Then we move faster than they can focus," Taren replied. Ahead, the ridge shimmered, a dark band of iron-rich stone that could shield them from scanners. But the ground trembled again, stronger this time, as if the residents were trying to speak through motion instead of sound. Kael looked back. "It's following the signal. It knows where we are." Taren's gaze stayed on the horizon. "Then we silence it together."
Chapter 16. Magnetic Ridge. The night was alive with sound, engines somewhere behind them, the hiss of sand under boots, and the low bass note of Helion Prime's restless pulse. Kael's breath came shallow through his mask filter. The magnetic ridge loomed ahead, a jagged escarpment veined with iron ore that shimmered faintly blue under the moons. Each flicker meant interference, exactly what they needed. "We're close," he said, voice rasping. Taren glanced over his shoulder. "Too close for the drones. Their sensors distort near magnetite. That's the idea." The first drone swept overhead, beam slicing across the sand like a blade of light. Kael dove toward the rocks, shoulder jarring. Taren caught the drone's hum a second before it tilted for another pass and hurled a shard of conductive metal skyward. The flare burst, confusing the scanner with a cascade of false signals. "Move!" Kael shouted. They sprinted through the haze toward a narrow cut in the ridge. Inside, the air turned cold. Magnetic fields whined softly, distorting the edges of light and sound. Kael felt the static tug against every metallic thread in his clothing. He bent double, trying to catch his breath. "I can hide the drives here. The ridge'll scramble the colony's locators." Taren scanned the opening. "It will also scramble your heartbeat. Do not stay long." Kael managed a shaky grin. "Nice to know you care." Taren didn't answer immediately. "You are loud in your silences, Dr. Riven." Kael blinked at him. What does that even mean?" "That even when you say nothing, the world listens." The words landed heavier than the wind. Kael looked away first, focusing on his equipment. "Help me reroute the dampeners. I can mask the relay drive signal using the ridge's own field." Together they set up a small perimeter. Kael's tools spread in neat arcs, Taren anchoring coils into the rock. Sparks danced between his fingers where Helionite skin met charged stone. The air filled with the scent of ozone and iron. When the last node engaged, the low magnetic hum shifted into a steady rhythm. The ridge itself seemed to breathe slower, quieter. Kael sank onto a flat rock. "That should buy us a few hours." Taren stood near the mouth of the cavern, scanning the dark dunes below. "They are searching in circles. The ridge will hold them at bay." Kael followed his gaze. "You sound sure." "I am." Silence pooled again. Comfortable this time, heavy with exhaustion, but not distrust. Kael found himself watching the faint shimmer across Taren's skin where the magnetic light played. "You risked yourself back there," Kael said finally. "Against a drone you could have outrun." Taren turned toward him, eyes reflective as molten silver. "You would not have outrun it." Kael huffed a soft laugh. "That's not the same as an explanation. It is the only one you need tonight." Later, Taren's KOV. The human slept, curled beside the console, face turned toward the faint blue glow. Even in rest, Kael's pulse seemed to echo the ridge's rhythm. Taren sat awake at the entrance, every sense tuned to the outer dark. The ridge hummed faintly against his back, an ancient sound that had nothing to do with machines. He wondered, not for the first time, whether the resonance had chosen Kael for more than chance. Humans had lived on Helion Prime for decades, but none had ever spoken the planet's language. Behind him, Kael stirred, murmuring something indistinct, half a dream, half a formula. Taren looked once more at the horizon where the first edge of dawn bent the light into two separate colors. He felt the faintest pull in his chest, recognition and warning braided together.
When the suns rose, the chase would begin again. But for the moment, under the ridge's magnetic heartbeat, they were invisible. Together. Chapter 17. The Echo Network. Kael's POV. By the time the suns reached mid-rise, the ridge's hum had steadied into something almost soothing. Kael had unpacked the portable scanners, patching together whatever still worked after the flight and the storm. Every monitor trembled with faint readings, half noise and half pattern. He adjusted one dial. The waveform sharpened and repeated. "Not random," he whispered. Taren looked up from the entrance. "You found a rhythm?" Kael nodded, eyes fixed on the graph. "It's cycling every 8 minutes. Too ordered for seismic noise, too complex for simple resonance rebound. It's information." Taren stepped closer. "From what source?" Kael replayed the signal at lower amplitude. The sound that filled the relay chamber was deep and layered, rising through octaves like breath through wind chimes. His skin prickled. "That's the same pattern we heard in the caverns, but it's modulating, like it's waiting for an answer." He hesitated, then keyed in a test tone, a single harmonic pulse matching the planet's previous base frequency. The sensors flared. Lines of light rippled across the ridge's walls, running through the metallic veins like current. The air vibrated. Taren grabbed his wrist, steady but urgent. "You called it by name." Kael stared at the readings. "It's reacting to our signal. That's not echo, it's feedback. It's conversation." Taren's POV. The ridge glowed faintly around them. He felt the vibration under his skin, the way one might feel a pulse in the throat. Helion Prime has always been spoken of as sentient, but only in the myths, the heart beneath the stone, the singer in the sand. Our priests claimed it heard the thoughts of those who walked its surface. I did not believe them. Kael glanced at him, half awed, half defiant. Maybe they were just scientists who didn't have the right instruments. "Or the right listener," Taren said. Kael flushed but kept typing. "If this is a planetary neural field, connected through mineral resonance, we could be standing inside the transmission node. Every dune, every ridge, every creature linked in one vast network." Taren watched him work, sensing both brilliance and peril in the same motion. "What happens if it learns too fast from us?" Kael paused. "Then we'll need to teach it carefully." The instruments chimed again, 3 rising tones, distinct, deliberate, then silence. Kael's eyes widened. "It repeated the harmonic interval I sent. Exactly." Taren felt the faint shift in the ground, like a breath taken between words. "Then it has learned the shape of your voice." Outside, the desert shimmered under the twin suns, every ridgeline quivering as if the planet were listening.
Chapter 18. Interference. The sensors screamed before Kael saw the dust. An incoming transmission burst across his display, a tangle of frequencies that didn't belong to the ridge. He zoomed in and caught the unmistakable carrier pattern of colony tech. "Drones, 12 of them," he said. "They're vectoring straight for us." Taren was already outside, scanning the horizon. Too many to outrun this time. The ridge's magnetic shimmer wavered. Tiny sparks danced in the sand around Kael's boots. "They're jamming the interference field," he muttered, using a harmonized counterwave. "Someone must have cracked my masking code." Taren's eyes narrowed. "Or someone on the inside helped them." Kael didn't answer. His hands were shaking too badly to type clean commands. "I can retune the ridge, but it'll need an amplifier, something alive to ground the frequency." The ground trembled. The sensor spiked off the charts. Taren's head snapped toward the slope. The planet is answering again. A deep vibration rolled through the valley, visible in the air as heat sheen ripples. The first drones descended into it and spun out of control, their rotors seizing, lights flashing erratically. Kael stared. "It's generating its own magnetic pulse." "Protecting itself," Taren said. "Protecting us," Kael corrected, too quietly. Taren's point of view. He could feel the frequency crawling through bone and muscle, a slow, resonant heartbeat that matched the storm's earlier cadence.
The planet wasn't just reacting, it was mirroring. The drones that survived the first wave regrouped, weapons arms shifting from strike to strike. One fired a low-yield plasma bolt into the ridge wall. Stone fractured. Molten dust sprayed across the entrance. Kael ducked. They're not trying to capture, they're trying to erase evidence. Taren drew a breath, assessing. Then we give them nothing left to burn. He slammed one of Kael's discarded sensor rods into the cracked stone, twisting until it locked into the vein of iron. Energy bleed up the shaft, blue-white, and he shouted over the rising hum, "Your command string, now!" Kael keyed the pattern he'd used in the caverns, 3 rising tones, 1 descending. The ridge lit from within. A wave of silentless force rippled outward. The remaining drones flickered, then fell like black rain into the dunes. Static filled the air. Silence followed, broken only by Kael's ragged breathing. Taren turned to him. "You are certain this thing is only listening?" Kael hesitated, watching faint lines of light fade down the rock. "I don't know anymore. Maybe it's deciding." Far below, the colony's radio beacon blinked a single red pulse. Warning or invitation, impossible to tell. Taren stepped closer to the ridge face, feeling the residual warmth under his palm. Then whatever it decides next, we must be the ones who teach it what mercy sounds like.
Chapter 19. The Recall Order. The wreckage of the drones lay scattered across the dunes, black glass and burnt circuitry glittering in the first light. Kael had stripped one of its transmitters for data. The machine was dead, but the message inside it wasn't. He patched the core into his reader. The screen flared red with an emergency header. Recall order authorized. All assets to return to Colony Dome for debrief. Guardian Soul to stand trial for protocol breach. Dr. Riven, indefinite quarantine pending review. Kael stared at the words until they blurred. "They've moved past containment," he said. "This is exile or arrest, maybe both." Taren's voice was low, even. "They name it justice when they mean silence." Kael rubbed a hand over his face. "If we don't go back, they'll mark us traitors. Any work I've done here, any research, it'll be erased." "Go back," Taren said, "and you erase yourself instead." The reply cut deeper than Kael expected. "You make it sound simple." "It never is, but simplicity is not the same as truth." The wind rose, sweeping sand over the fallen drones, burying them grain by grain. Kael looked toward the ridge. "We can't keep running forever." "No," Taren said, "but we can choose the direction." Kael swallowed hard. "You'd really stand against your command for this?" Taren's gaze didn't waver. "I already have." Taren's POV. The human's shoulders slumped under a weight that had nothing to do with gravity. The recall order had named them both, but it was Kael who bled from the inside, his loyalty cut in two. Taren watched the suns climb, twin circles mirrored in Kael's visor. He said, "When we bonded in the resonance storm, you called to Helion without knowing what you risked. The planet answered because you are not afraid to listen. Your people fear what listens back." Kael met his eyes. "And yours?" "We were taught never to speak first." Kael gave a strained laugh. "So now both sides will call us heretics." Taren's tone softened. "Heretic is another word for bridge." He picked up the ruined transmitter and handed it to Kael. "Keep it. Let them think their recall succeeded. Meanwhile, we find the next cavern and learn what the planet truly wants." Kael looked down at the device, then up at the horizon where the colony dome shimmered faintly in heat haze.
If we go deeper, there may be no way back. Then forward becomes our home. The wind shifted again, carrying a low vibration from the ridge, a distant echo that sounded almost like agreement.
Chapter 20. Descent Again. The dunes swallowed the last trace of the ridge by dusk. Kael had stopped checking the comlink. Every frequency now returned a flat line of static. The colony's voice was gone. What remained was the pull of the caverns, faint, rhythmic, impossible to ignore. The resonance hum seemed to follow them, sliding under the wind like a second heartbeat. "We shouldn't be hearing it up here," Kael murmured. Taren adjusted the pack over his shoulder. "The network widens. It knows where we go." Kael half laughed. "You make it sound conscious." "It may be," Taren said, tone matter-of-fact. "And if it is, it will test us again." They reached the fissure at twilight. The entrance shimmered with soft blue phosphor, the same color as the storm's pulse. Kael crouched to test the temperature, warm, almost welcoming. "Last time it almost killed us," he said. "Last time we didn't listen soon enough." He keyed the lamp on his wrist and followed Taren inside. Kael's point of view. The descent was easier this time. The rock underfoot vibrated with a steady rhythm, guiding each step. He could hear faint harmonics, voices in mineral, not words, but intention. Every few meters, Taren paused, pressing his palm to the wall. Kael felt the tremor of low-frequency waves move through both of them. At 50 meters depth, the passage widened into a familiar chamber, the site of their first resonance surge. The air shimmered, denser, alive. Kael unpacked the scanner. The readings were chaotic but purposeful, peaks aligning into symmetrical bursts. "It's anticipating," he whispered. "It knows we've returned." "Then speak," Taren said quietly. He keyed in a test pulse, identical to the one that had opened the ridge network. The cavern answered with a low harmonic that shook the dust from the ceiling. Light veins rippled outward, connecting tunnels, branching like nerves. For an instant, Kael thought he could sense the entire planet breathing through stone. Then the pulse shifted, one long note that resonated directly through his bones. Taren caught his shoulder. "It recognizes you." Kael's mouth went dry. "That's not possible." "Nothing here is impossible anymore." Taren's point of view. The light wrapped around them both, bright enough to blur every edge. He could feel Kael's pulse under his fingers, quick but steady, synchronizing with the cavern's beat. Helion listens, and it remembers. "Remembers what?" Kael's voice was thin. He hesitated. "Us." The light dimmed, leaving only the glow in the rock veins, like blood retreating through arteries. Kael knelt, still trembling, and traced one vein with a gloved hand. "It's mapping neural pathways, maybe forming an interface." "Or a choice," Taren said. Above them, a deep tone rolled through the tunnel system, a summons more felt than heard. Chapter 21. The Voice Beneath. The tunnel dropped into a bowl-shaped chamber lit from within. Crystalline veins pulsed in rhythmic intervals, one beat too deliberate to be random. Kael's scanner picked up the modulation, but it wasn't just data anymore. "Look at this," he murmured, voice half reverent. "It's constructing harmonics in linguistic ratio. It's trying to speak," Taren finished. The air thickened. The frequency shifted into a spectrum their ears couldn't parse, but their bones could feel. Kael pressed his palm to the nearest wall. A wave of sound, not heard, but experienced, rolled through him. It wasn't language as he knew it. It was memory. He saw flashes, Earth's oceans, Helion's deserts, twin suns rising over mirrored dunes, then faces, humans and Helionites alike, building, burning, rebuilding. A cycle of contact and collapse. When the resonance finally subsided, Kael found himself on his knees.
It showed me everything that's ever lived here, everything that's ever failed." Taren's expression was taut with recognition, and asked if we will repeat them. Kael turned sharply. "You heard that too?" "Not words, meaning." Taren stepped forward, placing his hand beside Kael's. The walls brightened. The planet's hum split into two tones, one mirroring Kael's heart rate, the other Taren's. Slowly, the waves converged until they became one. Kael's breath hitched. "It's synchronizing us." Taren's voice was low, testing whether unity is possible. The harmonics rose again, faster, louder. Kael's instruments shrieked warnings, over-frequency, dangerous amplitude, but pulling back felt wrong. The planet wasn't attacking, it was probing. Kael closed his eyes. "We're listening," he said aloud. The vibration steadied. Then came a pulse, slow, deliberate, like syllables struck in stone. Kael's translator flickered and began rendering phonemes. A string of them assembled on screen. Record, restore, remember. Kael whispered, "It's not warning us. It's asking for help." The walls dimmed to a softer hue. Taren's gaze softened too. Then perhaps the test was never of us alone, but of whether Helion still believes in those who listen. A faint echo, gentle as a heartbeat, answered him.
Chapter 22. Reverberation. The signal reached the surface before they did. By the time Kael climbed out of the cavern mouth, his wristcom was alive again. Static, interspersed with clipped human voices and bursts of Helionite code. Whatever message Helion had released, it hadn't stayed underground. He switched frequencies and heard the colony controller's strained command. "Containment protocols reinstated. All personnel report for emergency recalibration. All resonance data classified." Kael's stomach dropped. They heard it. The dunes ahead shimmered with faint blue filaments, light running through sand like nerves beneath skin. The same pulse that had filled the cavern was now threading across the planet's surface. Taren stepped beside him. "It spreads faster than I thought." "It's broadcasting through the mineral lattice," Kael said, half-dazed. "Every transmitter on the planet's picking it up. And your people believe they can cage a voice this large." A boom echoed across the horizon, the sound of orbital relays firing atmospheric dampeners. The colony was trying to mute Helion itself. Kael's scanner went white with interference. "They're counter-resonating. If they keep this up, they'll destabilize the crust." Taren's jaw tightened. They would silence a world rather than hear it. Kael turned to him. "Then we have to stop them." "How?" "By giving Helion a choice, showing them what they're doing, and letting it decide how to respond." Taren studied him for a long moment. "You trust the planet to choose peace?" "I trust it to understand truth." Taren's POV. The colony dome flickered in the distance, encased in a faint field of golden static. Inside that shield, Taren knew the governors were panicking, humans and Helionites both, clinging to order as if it were air. He felt the pulse beneath his boots. Helion's heartbeat had become his own. It whispered through the ground, not anger, but strain, like an instrument tuned too tight. "Kael," he said quietly, "if they continue, this world will fracture. Then we intercept the command network, reroute it through the ridge. The planet's field can absorb the feedback." Taren almost smiled. "You make rebellion sound like engineering." Kael met his gaze. "It always is." They knelt together over the broken drone Kael had salvaged. Circuits sparked, sand hissed as energy bled into the ridge veins. The ground responded with a low tone,
soft at first, then rising until the very air shimmered. Far away, the colony's dampeners flickered and failed. The planet exhaled. Kael sagged with relief. It's stabilizing. Taren looked to the horizon where the dome still glowed. No, it's thinking.
Chapter 23. The Harmonic Divide. The night sky above Helion Prime had changed. Constellations shimmered behind a translucent web of light. Every orbital relay, every mining rig, every dome rimmed with the same blue pulse Kael had seen in the caverns. The planet was resonating through its own technology now. Kael's receiver spat a dozen overlapping voices, scientists, governors, soldiers, pleading for order as systems fell into perfect synchronization. The network Helion had awakened was no longer local. It was planetary. "This isn't interference," Kael said. "It's alignment." Taren's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon where the colony dome glowed. "To your people, those words mean the same thing." A low tone rolled through the air, deeper than thunder. The ground shivered, every metal surface sang in sympathy. Kael covered his ears, but the vibration was inside him, not outside. He tasted iron and ozone. He looked to Taren. "It's pulling us into the field. Our bodies are conductors." Taren's expression was calm, almost reverent. "Helion has chosen to show us what unity costs." The frequency peaked. Kael saw flashes again. Human circuits, Helionite biocrystals, the very crust of the planet linking. Too much power, too perfect a harmony. A single wrong tone and everything would shatter. "Kael," Taren said, "we can break the loop or let it finish. Which will you choose?" Kael's hands shook on the console. If he disrupted the pattern, he might save the colony, but sever the connection forever. If he trusted it, trusted Helion, they might all die or become something new. He looked to Taren. "You once said bridge and heretic were the same word." Taren nodded. "Then speak, bridge." Kael keyed the transmitter and sent one phrase, 3 tones rising in deliberate imperfection, an echo of the human heartbeat, flawed but alive. The resonance wavered, then steadied around that imperfection. A silence, vast and absolute, filled the world. Light rippled through the desert like breath, and then the sky went still. Kael collapsed forward, every instrument blank. Taren caught him, steadying his shoulders. "You gave it a choice." Kael whispered, "And it chose to keep us."
Chapter 24. After Resonance. Light returned as sound before it became sight. A steady, low thrum, heartbeat or planet held Kael somewhere between waking and dream. When he finally opened his eyes, the ceiling above him was familiar rock, shot through with blue veins. The color pulsed in time with his breathing. He was alive. The instruments around him had gone silent, their screens dark except for one soft indicator on his wrist display. Field stable. He turned it over in disbelief. No damage, no catastrophic readings. Helion's frequency had settled into something the sensors called ambient equilibrium. A shadow moved beside him. "You slept for 2 cycles, Taren said. His voice was low, rough around the edges. "The world did not end. I stayed to confirm." Kael pushed himself upright, every muscle trembling. The colony? Silent at first, now tentative. Their signals returned this morning. They asked what happened. Kael looked toward the cavern mouth. Pale sunlight spilled down the tunnel,
painting the stone with shifting gold. Outside, the air carried a faint vibration, still present, but calm. "We reached a resonance balance," he said slowly. "Not perfect alignment, but sustainable oscillation. It's learning, moderation." Taren crouched beside him, studying the faint lines of light that still traced Kael's skin where the resonance had touched him. "And you?" Kael hesitated. "I can still feel it, like a second pulse, but it's not intrusive. It listens." Then perhaps it learned that too. They climbed toward daylight together. Taren's point of view. Outside, the desert was unrecognizable. The dunes gleamed as if brushed with fine crystal dust, every crest catching a hidden shimmer. Even the wind moved differently, slower, tuned. In the far distance, the colony dome shimmered but stood intact. No smoke, no collapse. Survival, but changed. Kael knelt, scooping a handful of sand. The grains vibrated faintly in his palm. "Residual charge, or memory," he murmured. Taren felt the hum to the sole of his boots. It wasn't threatening. It was attentive. "Helion spares what listens," Taren said. Kael smiled faintly. "Then it must have heard us." They walked toward the horizon, where light split between twin suns. Behind them, the spiral chamber's entrance breathed a low, steady rhythm. Neither command nor plea, only the sound of a world alive and waiting. Chapter 25. New Accord. The council chamber inside the colony dome felt smaller than Kael remembered. The same transparent walls that once framed the dunes now shimmered faintly with the planet's residual light, as though Helion were eavesdropping. Every seat was full. Scientists, officers, Helionite guardians, even the civilian delegates who rarely appeared in emergencies. Kael stood in the center, pulse steadying against the faint hum of the floor. Governor Wren's voice cut the quiet. "Dr. Riven, your actions triggered a planetary event that nearly erased our infrastructure. You claim we are safe now. Prove it." Kael turned the data tablet outward. Helion's resonance has stabilized at a harmonic equilibrium. Every network node now operates inside a natural frequency range. It's not suppressing us, it's synchronizing around our systems. If you resist that synchronization, you create instability. If you cooperate, the planet maintains balance. "Cooperate?" another counselor snapped. "With an environmental field?" Kael met his glare. "With a sentience that spared us when it didn't have to." The chamber fell still. Even Wren hesitated. At the edge of the room, Taren stepped forward, silver insignia of his guardian rank clutched in one hand. "I confirm what Dr. Riven says. Helion responded to aggression with containment, not destruction. When we listened, it answered in kind." He set the insignia on the table. "Our oaths were written to protect life on this world. That duty now includes Helion itself." Wren studied him. "You would dissolve our command structure on a belief?" Taren's tone was calm. "Not belief, observation. The planet acts as a single organism. We are already part of its system, whether we admit it or not." Kael added quietly, "Helion doesn't demand obedience. It mirrors intent. If we approach it with control, it resists. With respect, it adapts. That's the new law of physics here." The governor looked around the table, found no argument waiting, and finally said, "Then what do you propose?" Kael exhaled. "A shared research and governance compact. Helionite and human scientists working under a single ethical charter. No hidden experiments, no weaponization. Every test must account for consent, ours and the planet's." A long silence followed, only broken by the soft vibration beneath their feet, a reminder that Helion was indeed listening. Rin nodded once. "Draft your accord. We will ratify if it holds."
Chapter 26. Helion's Children. The spiral chamber no longer sang in warning. Now its walls shimmered with a low, contented hum that matched Kael's heartbeat. Months had passed since the new accord was signed, yet every time he descended the long ramp into the caverns, he still paused halfway down to listen. Helion's pulse rolled through the stone like surf. Data recorders along the passage captured frequencies so regular they could almost be music. At the base, under twin rings of pale bioluminescence, waited the new joint outpost. 1 part laboratory, 1 part sanctuary. Human engineers adjusted instruments side by side with Helionite technicians. Their breath misted in the same rhythm. No barriers, no guards. Kael touched a crystal growth budding from the floor. It was warm, faintly alive. Inside, filaments of light twisted like neurons. "Another one?" Taren's voice drifted down the ramp. Kael smiled. "They appear every few days. Each has a unique pulse sequence, none repeating." Taren joined him, resting a gloved hand near the growth. "Offspring? Helion's children," Kael said. "Fragments that store memory. When you touch them, they echo the last resonance pattern we used to stabilize the caverns." He demonstrated, brushing his fingers across the crystal. It glowed, replaying the harmonics of that night, the merging frequencies, the single balanced tone. For an instant, the whole chamber shimmered with faint gold, like sunlight caught underwater. Taren watched quietly. "It remembers us." Kael glanced up. "Or it remembers what we became when we stopped fighting." Taren's POV. He had seen wars end and treaties signed, but never peace this gentle. The colony domes now pulsed in harmony with the surrounding fields. Crops grew faster. Storms followed predictable paths. Helion's light had changed color slightly. Less harsh white, more amber. People called it the new dawn tone. Kael worked beside him, focused, hands moving across the console. The faint blue lines beneath his skin, the afterimage of resonance, still glimmered when he concentrated. Taren reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Kael's face. "You're still connected." Kael nodded. "It's quieter now, like background music you only notice when it stops." They stood together as another crystal flared to life nearby. A soft vibration spread outward, passing through rock, air, and them both. Kael's voice was barely a whisper. "Do you think it's talking to us?" Taren smiled. "I think it's learning to sing." The chamber's light rose in answer, golden and calm.